Captain Jack Reynolds jerked awake in his crashed couch as the transport ship's proximity alarm pierced the quiet hum of the engines. His hands instinctively found the control panel, muscle memory from thousands of hours in the pilot's seat taking over. The holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across his weathered face. "Status report," he barked, eyes scanning the readouts. Behind him, he could hear the rest of his team stirring in their acceleration couches. "Unknown vessel approaching from R6. Lieutenant Emily Spark Cooper responded, her fingers dancing across the engineering console. "They're using the comet's tail for cover. Clever bastards." Master Sergeant Mike Ghost Thompson unbuckled his harness and moved to the tactical station. Even after 20 years of special operations, his movements were fluid and precise. Energy signature matches a Raxan Shadowhunter-class vessel. Bigger than us. Much bigger. Reynolds cursed under his breath. Their ship, the Helios, was technically a civilian transport, at least on paper. The experimental defense systems hidden beneath its hull plates could handle most pirates, but a Shadowhunter was military grade. The fact that it was out here, beyond the orbit of Neptune, meant this was no random encounter. "Spark, get those shields up. Tank, Wraith, prep for possible boarders." Reynolds kept his voice steady despite the growing knot in his stomach. "The rest of you, battle stations. If they want a piece of us, they'll learn why you don't corner Earth's finest." Chris Tank Davidson and Lisa Wraith Mitchell were already moving, their practiced movements showing none of the fear that would grip ordinary civilians. The whole team had been handpicked for this mission. 12 of Earth's best combat specialists, disguised as a routine transport crew. The pursuing vessel emerged from the comet's tail like a predator leaving its den. Its obsidian hull absorbed what little sunlight reached this far out, making it look like a hole in space itself. Only the pulsing red lights along its weapon ports betrayed its presence. "Message incoming," Echo called from communications. "They're ordering us to power down and prepare for inspection," claiming to be outer system security. Reynolds almost laughed. With a blacked-out hull and masked transponder. "Like hell they are." He opened the ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is not a drill. Prepare for." The blast came without warning. Not from the weapon ports they'd been watching, but from a concealed launcher underneath. The electromagnetic pulse hit them like a physical blow, sending cascades of sparks across every console. Primary systems failing. Spark's fingers flew across her dead console, trying to route emergency power. Secondary systems unresponsive. They knew exactly where to hit us. Reynolds watched helplessly as the holographic displays flickered and died. Their experimental defenses, their advanced weapons, all the technological advantages they counted on, useless. The Raxan vessel grew larger in their viewports, its docking clamps extending like talons. "Ghost," Reynolds called out, "Plan Omega." "Now." Thompson nodded grimly and hit a sequence of commands on his personal device. Throughout the ship, hidden compartments sealed, data cores wiped, and emergency protocols activated. Whatever these pirates wanted, they wouldn't find Earth's secrets. The first hull breach came from above. The sound of cutting tools was followed by the hiss of equalizing pressure. Through the bridge viewport, Reynolds could see the boarding party. Tall, insectoid figures in sealed armor, their mandibles visible behind transparent faceplates. "They're using stasis gas," Tank reported from the security feed. "Standard trafficking protocol. They want us alive." Reynolds felt the first tendrils of gas seeping onto the bridge. His last conscious thought, before the darkness took him, was that these traffickers had made a serious mistake. They hadn't caught helpless civilians. They'd caught predators. The Raxan trafficking crew celebrated their successful catch, never noticing the slight smile on their unconscious prisoners' faces. Their ship's holds now contained 12 of the most dangerous humans in the solar system, and their comfortable routine was about to become very, very interesting. Ghost woke to the taste of copper in his mouth, a common side effect of stasis gas. His special forces training kicked in before his eyes opened, keeping his breathing steady as he assessed his surroundings through other senses. Cold metal floor, humming energy field, recycled air with a metallic tang. Standard alien detention cell. The primitive is awakening. A clicking voice announced in poorly translated English. Vital signs indicate confusion and fear. Ghost almost smiled. The biosensor was reading exactly what he wanted it to read. 20 years of Black Ops had taught him how to fool much better equipment than this. Through barely opened eyes, he caught glimpses of his captors. Raxons, just as he'd thought. 3 of them stood outside his cell, their insectoid forms looming over him, with the casual superiority of experienced slavers. "This one has excellent muscle density," another Raxon observed, mandibles clicking excitedly. "The arena crowds will enjoy watching it fight. All 12 specimens are superior physical specimens," the third one chittered. "The betting odds will be excellent." Ghost let his head loll to the side, using the movement to scan the detention block. The cells were arranged in a horseshoe pattern, standard Raxon design. He could see most of his team through the energy fields. Tank was directly across from him, already awake, and doing his best to look dazed. 3 cells down, Wraith lay curled in a defensive ball, but Ghost recognized her posture. She was mapping guard patterns through her eyelashes. A groan from the adjacent cell drew the guard's attention. Kelly Anderson, one of their Army Rangers, was putting on an impressive show of disoriented panic. Where am I? What's happening?" The female awakens violently. One guard noted, "Perhaps we should demonstrate our authority." The energy field dropped, and 2 guards entered Kelly's cell. Ghost watched through slitted eyes as they roughly hauled her to her feet. Kelly stumbled, seemingly weak from the stasis, but Ghost saw her test their grip strength, note their joint mechanisms, and locate their weapons. Even in her panic, she was gathering intelligence. "You will learn submission, primitive," the lead guard growled, giving her a shake. "The arena masters prefer their fighters disciplined." "The arena." Kelly's voice cracked perfectly. "What arena? We're just transport pilots." The guards laughed, a harsh clicking sound. "Transport pilots with military-grade encryption and hidden weapons compartments. Your ship's disguise was poor, primitive. But it matters not. Soon you will fight for our entertainment." More of the team was awakening now. Jake Martinez, their other ranger, was doing an excellent job of looking terrified. Lysa Wraith Mitchell had progressed to rocking back and forth, mumbling incoherently, while Ghost knew she was actually running combat calculations in her head. The cell block door hissed open, admitting a larger Raxon in elaborately marked armor. "Report," he commanded. "All specimens stable. Overseer," one guard responded, showing expected signs of confusion and fear. "The translator is functioning well." The Overseer approached Ghost's cell, studying him like a particularly interesting insect. "This one has military bearing. It will need to be broken before the arena." Ghost let his eyes go wide with manufactured fear, stumbling back from the energy field. "Please," he begged. "We're not soldiers. We're just civilian contractors." "Lying primitives," the Overseer clicked dismissively. "No matter. Fear will loosen your tongues during processing. And if not," his mandibles spread in what might have been a smile, "we have ways of ensuring cooperation." As the Overseer and his guards moved on, Ghost caught Tank's eye across the block. The Big Seal gave an imperceptible nod. Through their cells, the rest of the team was similarly signaling, all while maintaining their frightened poses. The Traffickers had made multiple mistakes already, keeping the team relatively close together, revealing their destination, and most importantly, underestimating their cargo. Ghost allowed himself a small smile as the guards dimmed the cell block lights for the sleep cycle. The Traffickers thought they were looking at 12 scared prisoners. In reality, they were watching 12 predators gather intelligence for the hunt to come. Lieutenant Emily Spark Cooper pressed herself against the back wall of her cell, looking every bit the terrified prisoner. In reality, her position gave her the perfect view of the plasma conduit running behind the cell blocks. The Raxans had been arrogant enough to leave the maintenance panels visible, a mistake that made her want to smile. The female appears to be retreating from stimuli, one of the guards noted in their logs. Psychological breakdown likely. If they only knew, Spark thought, her MIT-trained mind already mapping the ship's power distribution. The crystalline lattice design was familiar. She'd written her thesis on similar alien tech. More importantly, she'd written 3 classified papers on how to sabotage it. 2 cells down, Alex Maverick Rodriguez was performing his own analysis. Every time the guards passed, he pressed against the energy field, playing the role of a panicked pilot. Each panic attack gave him another chance to study the ship's internal layout. This intersection, he muttered under his breath, timing it with another fake sob, matches the Shadowhunter's tertiary maintenance corridor. His thousands of hours studying xenonautical engineering were paying off. He'd recognized the ship class immediately. The Raxans didn't know that humans had detailed files on every known trafficker vessel. Ryan Boom Wilson had spent his exercise period having an apparent breakdown, flailing against the cell walls. The guards had laughed at his primitive display of frustration. They hadn't noticed him testing the resonant frequency of every surface he touched. "Hey," Boom called out suddenly, his voice cracking. "I need to use the bathroom." The guard's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Use the waste reclamation unit in your cell. Primitive." I can't figure out how it works," Boom stammered, adding a slight tremble to his hands. The guard sighed and approached to demonstrate, giving Boom a perfect view of the locking mechanism on his armor. In her cell, Lisa Wraith Mitchell had graduated from rocking to pacing. Each circuit of her small cell was precisely timed, allowing her to track guard rotations, shift changes, and security protocols. The guards saw a prisoner on the verge of cracking. They missed her cataloging every weakness in their patrol patterns. "The specimens are adapting poorly to captivity," the shift supervisor noted, passing by Tank's cell. "Particularly the larger ones." Tank, who had been methodically doing push-ups, looked up with carefully manufactured fear. When are you letting us go?" The supervisor laughed, the sound like grinding metal. "The arena masters pay well for strong specimens. You should be honored. Few primitives get to fight for the entertainment of the civilized races." The guard moved on, missing the quick series of hand signals Tank exchanged with Ghost in the opposite cell. 4 guards per shift. 2 carry stunners. 1 has override codes. Supervisor is augmented. Ghost acknowledged with a subtle tap of his fingers. He'd been counting security cameras, 3 visible, 2 disguised as environmental sensors. Standard Raxan configuration, which meant there was likely a blind spot near the cell block's environmental controls. Jake Martinez chose that moment to launch into another convincing panic attack, drawing the guards' attention. The distraction allowed Emily Echo Williams to press her ear against the cell wall, analyzing the ship's communication frequencies. The guards thought she was trying to hide. They didn't realize she was mapping their entire internal comm system. "They're so predictable," Ghost muttered under his breath, pitching his voice so only his teammates could hear. "Standard formation, standard protocols." "Just like the simulations," Spark replied quietly, disguising her words with a sob. "These plasma conduits haven't been updated in 3 cycles. 1 power surge in the right place." "Patience," Ghost warned, noting a guard turning their way. Louder, he called out, "Please, we're not soldiers. We're just scared civilians." The guard clicked in derision and moved on, never realizing that what they saw as devolution into terror was actually a carefully orchestrated assessment. Their primitive cargo wasn't breaking down. They were methodically taking apart every system, every protocol, and every weakness of their captor ship. In the darkness of his cell, Ghost allowed himself a small smile. The Raxans had made another crucial mistake. They'd given their prisoners time to plan. The opportunity came during the 3rd feeding cycle. Ghost watched the guards approach with their usual arrogant swagger, carrying trays of nutrient paste that looked deliberately unappetizing. He caught Tank's eye across the cell block and gave an imperceptible nod. It was time to test their captor's capabilities. Food, primitives, the lead guard announced, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Try not to choke on it like yesterday. Tank rose from his sleeping pad, all 6'4" of him swaying unsteadily. To the guards, he looked like a confused giant, still struggling with the effects of stasis. In reality, every stumbling step was precisely calculated. I don't feel so good," Tank mumbled, pressing a hand against the cell wall. The guard's bioscanner would show elevated heart rate, increased body temperature, all manually controlled through years of special forces conditioning. The lead guard sighed. "Stand back from the barrier, primitive. You know the procedure." Tank took an unsteady step backward, seemingly complying. The energy field dropped, and 2 guards entered with the food tray. That's when Tank made his move. He stumbled forward, appearing to lose his balance. His massive frame crashed into the nearest guard, sending them both sprawling. The guard's armor took the brunt of the impact, exactly as Tank had intended. "Restrain it," the lead guard shouted, rushing forward with a stun baton. Tank offered token resistance, just enough to make them use their equipment. Each blow, each restraining hold, told him something new about their capabilities. Ghost watched the confrontation through narrowed eyes, cataloging every detail. The guards' armor was latest generation Raxan combat gear, but their reactions were civilian grade. These weren't military troops, they were traffickers using stolen equipment. The large primitive is displaying aggression. One guard reported into his comm unit, requesting backup. From her cell, Spark timed the response. 18 seconds for reinforcements to arrive. The ship's security protocols were even sloppier than they'd hoped. Meanwhile, Wraith noted the exact sequence of commands used to increase the cell's containment field. Tank continued his performance, struggling just enough to look dangerous while letting the guards subdue him. Each movement was a test of their strength, their coordination, their equipment limitations. By the time they pinned him down, he'd identified 3 crucial weaknesses in their armor design. "You will learn discipline, primitive," the lead guard snarled, applying the stun baton. Tank convulsed convincingly, but the team noticed his hand signals. Stunner output at 30%, non-military grade, vulnerable power cell placement. The security supervisor arrived, surveying the scene with obvious disdain. "Control your merchandise," he snapped at the guards. "The arena masters don't pay for damaged goods." The specimen attacked without warning. One guard protested. "It's stronger than it looks." The supervisor's mandibles clicked in contempt. "It's a primitive driven by fear and confusion. Nothing more." He turned to Tank, who lay panting on the cell floor. "Remember this lesson, beast. Your next meal comes tomorrow, if you behave." As the guards retreated, reactivating the energy field, Echo caught fragments of their comm chatter. Their encryption was laughably basic. She'd already identified 3 ways to bypass it. Across the cell block, Maverick had used the distraction to test the visual range of the security sensors. The blind spots were exactly where they'd predicted. Subject shows signs of submission after correction, the supervisor noted in his log. Recommend continued physical discipline for optimal results. Ghost exchanged quick glances with his team. The Raxan's smug satisfaction was evident. They thought they'd witnessed a failed act of primitive desperation. They hadn't realized they'd just given their prisoners exactly what they needed. Combat data. In his cell, Tank slowly picked himself up, making a show of nursing his injuries. But Ghost could see the satisfied glint in his eyes. Their first move had worked perfectly. The Raxans were confident in their control, convinced of their superiority. They had no idea they'd just handed their primitive cargo the keys to their own destruction. The hunt was truly beginning. Senior Hunter Crix couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Standing in the security center, he watched the surveillance feeds with growing unease. 20 cycles of trafficking experience had given him instincts that rarely failed, and right now, those instincts were screaming. "Watch this section again," he instructed the junior officer, rewinding the exercise period footage. "Look at their movements." The footage showed the primitives pacing their cells, occasionally stumbling or displaying signs of distress. Standard behavior for new captures, except there, Crix froze the frame. The female they call Wraith. "Count her steps." The junior officer clicked his mandibles dismissively. "She's just pacing, Senior Hunter." "They all do that. 8 steps forward, 5-second pause, 8 steps back, every time." Crix's compound eyes narrowed. That's not panic. That's measuring. Across the ship, small anomalies were multiplying. A maintenance drone reported tools missing from the engineering bay, only to find them 3 hours later, seemingly untouched. Security cameras in Section 4 would glitch for precisely 2.3 seconds every rotation. Environmental controls in the detention block fluctuated by 0.2 degrees at random intervals. "The primitives are adapting poorly to captivity," the ship's doctor reported during the daily briefing. "Particularly the one they call Spark. She spends hours staring at the walls." Crix had seen the footage. The human wasn't staring. She was studying the plasma conduits with far too much understanding in her eyes. But when he tried to point this out, the captain merely laughed. "You're jumping at shadows, old hunter," the captain clicked. "They're primitives from a backwater world, barely space-capable." A console chirped, drawing their attention. Another mysterious power fluctuation in the lower holds. The engineering chief blamed it on cosmic radiation, but Crix noticed it happened exactly when Ghost and Tank were doing their random exercise routines. In his quarters that evening, Crix reviewed more footage. The human called Maverick was having another panic attack, throwing himself against his cell walls. But slowed down, the impacts formed a perfect diagnostic pattern, exactly the kind used to test hull resonance frequencies. "Request permission to increase security protocols," Crix submitted formally. The captain's response was quick and dismissive. "Request denied. Don't waste resources on frightened primitives." The next shift brought more inconsistencies. The waste reclamation system in Cell Block C reported unusual chemical compositions, trace elements that shouldn't be there. The human called Boom had another breakdown, his seemingly random movements matching maintenance access patterns with suspicious precision. During meal distribution, Crix watched Echo closely. Her apparent mumbling wasn't random at all. It perfectly matched their comm system's encryption cycles. When he tried to adjust the frequencies, 3 separate systems crashed simultaneously. "Just a coincidence," the tech supervisor insisted. "The primitives don't even understand our basic technology." But Crix couldn't shake the feeling they were missing something obvious. During his patrol, he paused outside Ghost's cell. The human sat in apparent meditation, his breathing slow and steady. "Your people are not what they seem." Crix clicked softly in his native tongue, not using the translator. Ghost's lip twitched slightly, a movement so small most would miss it. But Crix saw it, and his suspicions deepened. These humans understood far more than they were letting on. He filed another report, more urgent this time. The captain's response was to reassign him to cargo hold duty, away from the detention block. "Your paranoia is disrupting routine operations," the official reprimand read. As Crix walked to his new post, he passed the cells one last time. Tank was doing push-ups, but the rhythm was wrong. It wasn't exercise, it was code. In the security center, cameras continued to glitch, systems continued to fluctuate, and 12 humans continued their act of frightened submission. But now, watching from the cargo hold, Crix recognized the truth. They weren't watching their cargo. Their cargo was watching them. The arena masters demanded demonstration. The captain announced, mandibles clicking with anticipation. They want to assess the merchandise before committing to purchase. The guards had gathered the entire human crew to witness what they thought would be an entertaining display of primitive combat. Echo, the smallest of the group, stood in the makeshift arena, a cleared cargo hold with hastily erected energy barriers. Across from her, Tank's massive frame cast a long shadow under the harsh lighting. The small female against the large male, the captain gestured dramatically for the viewing buyers on the encrypted feed. Watch how fear drives these primitives to fight. In his observation post, Crix felt his unease grow. The humans' postures were wrong. Echo's stance appeared awkward and frightened, but her weight distribution was perfect. Tank's lumbering movements masked a fighter's precision. "Begin," the captain commanded. Tank charged forward with a roar, seemingly driven by blind panic. Echo screamed convincingly and tried to run. To the traffickers, it looked like predator and prey. To Crix's trained eye, it was a dance. "Magnificent display of primitive aggression," one of the buyers commented over the feed. "The large one shows excellent predatory instinct." But Tank's wild swings were missing by millimeters, not meters. Echo's panicked retreats always left her just within reach, maintaining perfect fighting distance. Their movements created a complex pattern across the cargo hold, herding the guards into predictable positions. "Please," Echo cried out, dodging another calculated strike. "I don't want to fight." Crix noticed Ghost watching intently from among the other prisoners. His hands were making tiny movements, signal patterns that matched Tank and Echo's footwork exactly. This wasn't a fight. It was a coded briefing. In the arena, Tank had Echo cornered. "Submit. Primitive," the guard commander ordered, enjoying the spectacle. Echo cowered, arms raised in apparent terror. Only Crix saw her fingers dancing in precise patterns, matching the rhythm of the ship's security protocols. Enough entertainment, the captain decided. Separate them before. The cargo hold's lights flickered, just for a moment. The guards looked up, distracted. In that instant, Crix saw Tank and Echo exchange a look of pure professional satisfaction. "Minor power fluctuation," the engineering chief reported. "Probably feedback from the containment field." But Crix knew better. During the fight, the humans had managed to test every security system in the cargo hold. Their panicked movements had mapped guard positions, weapons placements, and response patterns. Even now, Ghost was cataloging the guards' reactions to the power surge. "Most impressive," one of the buyers commented. The small female showed appropriate fear, while the large male demonstrated suitable aggression. "We will pay premium rates for this batch." The captain preened, his mandibles spread wide in satisfaction. "Excellence in merchandise is our specialty. Now return the primitives to their cells. Separate containment levels this time. We don't want them drawing courage from each other." As the guards moved to comply, Crix saw something that made his carapace crawl. Echo, being dragged away in apparent exhaustion, caught Tank's eye. Both humans showed brief, matching expressions, the kind Crix had seen on veteran hunters after successfully baiting a trap. "Captain," Crix stepped forward, protocol forgotten. "These humans are performing beyond expectations." The captain cut him off. "Return to your post, senior hunter. Your obsession with these primitives grows tiresome." In the corridor, Echo stumbled, causing a momentary tangle of guards. Crix alone saw Wraith and Spark exchange lightning-fast hand signals during the confusion. Whatever plan the humans were executing, it was reaching a critical phase. Later, reviewing the security feeds, Crix counted 7 accidental collisions, each placing the human near critical ship systems. The supposedly random chaos of the fight had masked a precise reconnaissance operation. Their cargo hadn't been fighting for survival. They'd been gathering intelligence. And now, watching Ghost's satisfied expression as he was led back to his cell, Crix realized a terrible truth. The real fight hadn't even begun. The plan unfolded with the precision of a military chronometer. At exactly 300 ship time, when the night shift was at its lowest alertness, Boom completed his makeshift electromagnetic pulse generator using components he gradually collected during his nervous breakdowns. In his cell, Ghost counted down silently. 3, 2, 1. Spark flexed her fingers, mentally reviewing the ship's plasma conduit layout one final time. "Time to show them what MIT's finest can do," she whispered. The first sign that something was wrong came from the engineering deck. A cascade of power fluctuations rippled through the ship's crystalline nervous system. Too precise to be accidental, too complex to stop. Spark's intimate knowledge of Raxan technology turned their own power grid against them. Multiple system failures. The engineering chief's panicked clicks echoed through the ship's comm. The plasma conduit's air. The ship plunged into darkness. In the confusion, none of the guards noticed that their primitive prisoners had already closed their eyes, perfectly adapted to the blackout. Tank's cell door clicked open. The emergency release system he'd modified during his exercise sessions working flawlessly. "Security team to detention block," the captain ordered. "Contain the prisoners." But the security teams found themselves responding to ghost signals planted by Echo's careful manipulation of their comm systems. Teams rushed to empty sections while the real action unfolded in their blind spots. Grix, monitoring from his cargo post, watched in horror as the security feeds showed precisely coordinated movement through the darkness. The humans weren't stumbling or panicking. They moved like shadows, each step purposeful. Wraith appeared silently behind two guards, her movements liquid grace in the emergency lighting. Before they could react, she disarmed them both, using their own weapons' weight distribution against them. The guard's armor, which Tank had so carefully studied, offered no protection against the joint locks he'd identified. "Port side breach." Someone screamed over the comm. The primitive's air. The transmission cut off as Spark completed her takeover of the ship's communication grid. In the armory, Ghost and Tank worked with practiced efficiency, securing weapons and cutting off potential reinforcements. Every security protocol the Traffickers launched found itself redirected or disabled by Echo's intimate knowledge of their systems. "Fascinating design," Boom commented casually as he disabled another security checkpoint. "Pity about the resonance vulnerability in the door mechanisms." The captain barricaded himself on the bridge, surrounded by his elite guards. "How?" He clicked frantically. "They're primitives. They couldn't possibly." The bridge doors hissed open. Maverick stood in the doorway, holding a modified Raxan pulse rifle with the comfort of someone who'd studied xenotechnology for years. "Actually," he said, "we had your ship's specifications before we even left Earth. Standard Shadowhunter class. Great for intimidation, terrible for internal security." Ghost's voice came over the ship's comm, now under their control. "Bridge, engineering, and armory secured. All hostile forces contained. No casualties." A pause. "Well, maybe some bruised carapaces." Crix, watching from his security station, saw the full picture at last. Every nervous breakdown had been reconnaissance. Every panic attack had masked careful sabotage. Every primitive response had been part of an intricately choreographed plan. The captain, mandibles trembling, faced his former captives. What are you?" "Just the crew you shouldn't have tried to traffic," Ghost replied, stepping onto the bridge. "Captain Jack Reynolds, Earth Defense Force Special Operations. These primitives you captured, they're our best combat engineers, tactical specialists, and covert operators." Tank appeared with the rest of the team, all armed and moving with professional precision. "Thanks for the hospitality," he grinned, "and for letting us study your ship's weaknesses so thoroughly. Our engineers will have a field day with this data." As Earth Defense Force ships responded to their signal, Crix realized the fundamental truth. They hadn't been watching their cargo. Their cargo had been hunting them. The Earth Defense Force cruiser Normandy dropped out of FTL Drive alongside the captured trafficking vessel. Captain Reynolds stood on the bridge of the Shadowhunter, watching through the viewscreen as boarding tubes extended between the ships. Behind him, his team maintained professional control of their former captors, though Tank couldn't quite hide his satisfied grin. EDF Special Operations, requesting permission to transfer prisoners and intelligence. Reynolds transmitted. Mission accomplished. Command. You won't believe the data we've collected. The Raxan captain, now securely restrained, clicked his mandibles in disbelief. This was planned? Impossible. Your ship's signature matched civilian transport patterns perfectly. That's because it was a civilian transport, Ghost explained, checking the restraints on another trafficker. Just upgraded with some special features. We've been tracking your operation for months, waiting for you to take the bait. Spark emerged from engineering, her tablet filled with technical data. Their plasma conduit design has 7 previously unknown vulnerabilities, she reported. And their security encryption. I've seen better protection on Earth children's toys. The captain's compound eyes widened. You're lying. Humans are barely space capable. Your technology is primitive, your understanding limited. About that, Maverick interrupted, reviewing ship logs at the navigation console. Fun fact. We deliberately downplay our capabilities. Makes it easier to catch overconfident traffickers. Crix, watching from his own restraints, finally laughed, a sound of genuine appreciation. I knew something was wrong. The patterns were too perfect, the mistakes too precise. He turned to Ghost. Your people play their roles brilliantly. Best way to catch predators, Ghost replied with a slight nod of respect to the former hunter, is to let them think they're the ones doing the hunting. EDF specialists boarded the vessel, efficiently processing prisoners and securing evidence. ECO handed over complete recordings of all ship communications, including contact details for their entire trafficking network. The Arena Masters will be particularly interested in these files, she said with a grim smile, especially the parts about their own security vulnerabilities. Speaking of vulnerabilities, Boom added, presenting his makeshift EMP device to the evidence team. Pretty impressive what you can build with spare parts from a waste reclamation unit, right? The Raxan captain, being led away, stopped suddenly. Wait, if this was a trap, if you planned this, why let us capture you at all? Why not just arrest us at the start? Reynolds stepped forward, his expression serious. Because trafficking networks like yours need to learn a lesson. Humanity isn't just another species to be exploited. We're not primitive, and we're not helpless. The word will spread, Wraith added, her voice cold. Try to capture humans, and you might just find yourself being the one studied and analyzed. As the prisoners were transferred to the EDF cruiser, the team gathered on their former prison's bridge. The mission had been a complete success, not just capturing one ship, but gathering intelligence that would help dismantle trafficking operations across 3 sectors. Intel says they've already started calling us the Predator's prey in some ports, Tank reported, checking his datapad. Apparently, getting systematically dismantled by your own cargo is bad for the trafficking industry's reputation. Ghost nodded approvingly. Good. Let them spread the story. Every trafficker who thinks twice about attacking a human ship is one less we have to deal with. Crix, being led past them to the transfer tube, paused one final time. You know what the truly impressive part was. He clicked softly. Not the technical knowledge, not the combat skills. It was the patience, the precision, the perfect coordination. His mandibles moved in what might have been admiration. You weren't just warriors. You were hunters. No, Reynolds corrected him, as the former hunter was led away. We were professionals, doing our job. Remember that the next time someone calls humans primitive. As the Earth Defense Force began their standard cleanup procedures, the story was already spreading through alien communication channels. Beware the humans. They're not what they seem. Sometimes, when you think you're hunting them, they're actually hunting you.